Hello and welcome to Standup Historian. My name is Kurosh and I bring this podcast to you from beautiful Seattle, Washington. It's more than a month since I had my experiment with videocast, and I have been creating a lot of material for more podcasts, and it's very hard to decide what to talk about next. But in light of what has been going on in our world and the exposure of what the various governments around the world did to their people throughout the years of 2020, 21, 2022, and with the excuse of a pandemic, I decided to devote this episode to some quotes from very important books and very important people. The first one is Gulag, Archipelago by Aleksander Solzhenitsyn. He chronicles what happened during 1918 till 1956 in Russia under the communist government of that country, what happened to those people. And he asks important questions about the nature of evil. Where did this evil people came from? Are they part of our society? Did they came from us, or they were foreigners? And he answers that they are from us. And we saw no less evil during the pandemic. Governments, different governments, even those who claim to be democratic, crushed their nations, forced and coerced them to get vaccinated. And here we are, not long after that, we see a lot of exposure, a lot of facts coming out, and we have realized that many of what happened was not mistakes. Unfortunately, it was not incompetence of our leaders or so-called scientists, but unfortunately it was colluded, it was planned, and it was imposed on humanity. And it smeared names of many countries that have been proud of their culture, their longest standing for democracy, and among them, you name it, many European countries. Number one probably in the world, Australia, that they literally crushed their people. We saw what happened in Canada, and of course a lot less in the United States. But not only these years and all the crimes that was committed against the humanity are behind us, but we have to learn from those, and we have to understand how to deal with future. And there is a countless number of people that the harm will still stay with them for the rest of their lives. People who drive alone in their cars with a mask, and the fear of a virus, a different kind of virus, with the constant fear of getting sick and constant fear of others. So the worst thing this time did to us was to separate us, to stop us from shaking hand, and to stop us from seeing each other face to face, which in fact brings out the power of humanity as a whole and the power of being together for humans. So I dedicate this episode to all those who suffered, to all those who stood against the narrative of the day and were censored, crushed, even imprisoned for telling the truth and trying to wake people up to what was going on. And after that, it seems like the plan is still unfolding right before our eyes. And I hope that I'm wrong, but it seems like many of us are still fast asleep. So let me start by something from Aleksander Solzhenitsyn. Let's listen to this. And this is again from his book, Gulag, Archipelago. As the folk saying goes, if you speak for the wolf, speak against him as well. Where did this wolf tribe appear from among our people? Does it really stem from our own roots? Our own blood? It is our own. And just so we don't go around flaunting too proudly the white mantle of the just, let everyone ask himself, if my life had turned out differently, might I myself not have become just such an executioner? It is a dreadful question if one really answers in honestly. So, as you heard, he's trying to be very honest and ask the question. We cannot blame others. It's from us that harms us. But during all these years, we noticed another phenomenon. It was not new, and it was not for the first time that such technique was used against humanity. We had seen it before with Nazis and also under the Stalin in Russia. And that was mass formation and use of psychology against the mass group of people. There is an amazing book which I recommend to everybody to read it. And the book is by Dr. Mattias Desmet, and it's called The Psychology of Totalitarianism. It's an amazing book from a scientific point of view. He analyzes what totalitarianism is, how the totalitarian governments can have a strong grip on nations, which otherwise we find them to be very enlightened and intellectual people among them. Very simply, look at what happened in Germany during the rule of Nazis, which was a complete totalitarian system. And it also talks about what happened to humanity, this time the entire world. So it was not this nation or that nation, it was worldwide, and how the totalitarianism that still exists used psychology to form everybody's opinion and take advantage of people and use it, in fact, against them. I'm going to share a couple of paragraphs from this book. Again, this is The Psychology of Totalitarianism by Mattias Desmet. Totalitarianism is the belief that human intellect can be guiding principle in life and society. It aims to create a utopian, artificial society led by technocrats or experts who, based on their technical knowledge, will ensure that the machine of society runs flawlessly. In this view, the individual is completely subordinated to the collective, reduced to being a cog in the machine of society. The ideal of technocratic society was inherent to the Enlightenment tradition, especially in its positive branch. Positive thinkers like Henri de Saint-Simon and Auguste Comte expressed their fanatical belief in a humanistic, technocratic society, in which scientists and technocrats would take the place of popes and priests. Not God, but human reason should be glorified. This is the way to a utopian society without war or conflict, a realm of freedom. Nazism, and even more so Stalinism, are the most ambitious historical attempts to put totalitarian ideology into practice. They would realize paradise, and to this end, everything was considered justified. Exclusion, stigmatization, and ultimately industrial extermination of every population group that did not fit within the ideal image. In both historical examples, the new utopian society had to be created through the ruthless application of a rock-solid logic. However, it would be a capital mistake to identify the phenomenon of totalitarianism only in totalitarian regimes. There is an ever-present totalitarian undercurrent that consists of fanatical attempt to steer and control life in far-reaching ways on the basis of technical scientific knowledge. Technocratic thinking always walks on two legs. On one hand, it appeals to people by intimidating a positive image of an artificial paradise, with which it claims we can be delivered from the adversity and suffering. On the other hand, it imposes itself based on anxiety as a necessity to solve problems, with every quote-unquote object of anxiety that has emerged in our society in recent decades. Terrorism, the climate problem, the coronavirus. This process has leaped forward. The threat of terrorism induced the necessity of a surveillance apparatus, and our privacy is now seen as an irresponsible luxury. To control climate problems, we need to move to lab-printed meat, electric cars, and an online society. To protect ourselves against COVID-19, we have to replace our natural immunity with mRNA vaccine, induced artificial immunity. The fourth industrial revolution, in which man is expected to physically merge with technology, the transhumanist ideal, is increasingly seen as an unavoidable necessity. The entire society has to change into an internet of bodies, in which the human body is digitally monitored, tracked, and traced by a technocratic government. This is the only way we will be able to master the problems of the future. There is no alternative. Anyone who refuses to go along with the technological solution is naive and quote-unquote unscientific. So, you see in just this small paragraph how much information was offered to understand what is going on in our world, and that is the most important part of it. There is an ideology behind everything that we see is happening. There are people who in fact believe that human salvation lies in integration with machines, with Neuralink, with 15-minute cities, and it's not coming from the human relationship with nature. In their eyes, as Yuval Harari puts it, humans are hackable animals. I believe he is an animal, and perhaps he is hackable, but as a whole, humanity is not a hackable animal. But you see, that comes from a point of ideology. When they're talking about fourth industrial revolution, as Klaus Schwab always boasts about that, they honestly and deeply believe that this is the only way for salvation of humanity. In this way, there is no difference between likes of Schwab and Stalin or Hitler. There is absolutely no difference. Their methods may seem different, but the result would be the same thing. The same dystopia that was in Soviet Union will be offered to the entire humanity. And let me now bring a quote from Solzhenitsyn again, when he talks about the different evildoers, those who have ideology and those who are just evil. Listen to this part. Just how are we to understand that as the act of an evildoer? What sort of behavior is it? Do such people really exist? We would prefer to say that such people cannot exist, that there are not any. It is permissible to portray evildoers in a story for children, so as to keep the picture simple. But when the great world literature of the past, Shakespeare, Schiller, Dickens, inflates image of evildoers of the blackest shades, it seems somewhat farcical and clumsy to our contemporary perception. The trouble lies in the way these classic evildoers are pictured. They recognize themselves as evildoers, and they know their souls are black, and they reason, I cannot live unless I do evil, so I will set my father against my brother. I will drink the victim's suffering until I'm drunk with them. Iago very precisely identifies his purpose and his motives as being black and born of hate. But no, that's not the way it is. To do evil, a human being must first of all believe that what he's doing is good, or else that it's a well-considered act in conformity with natural law. Fortunately, it is in the nature of human being to seek justification for his actions. Macbeth's self-justifications were feeble, and his conscience devoured him. Yes, even Iago was a little lamb too. The imagination and the spiritual strength of Shakespeare's evildoers stopped short at a dozen corpses because they had no ideology. Ideology, that is what gives evildoing its long-sought justification and gives the evildoers the necessary steadfastness and determination. That is the social theory which helps to make his acts seem good instead of bad in his own and others' eyes, so that he won't hear reproaches and curses, but will receive praise and honors. That was how the agent of the Inquisition fortified their wills. By invoking Christianity, the conquerors of foreign lands, by extolling the grandeur of their motherland, the colonizing by civilization, the Nazis by race, and the Jacobins by equality, brotherhood, and the happiness of future generations. Thanks to ideology, the 20th century was fated to experience evildoing on a scale calculated in the millions. This cannot be denied, nor passed over, nor suppressed. How, then, we dare to insist that evildoers do not exist? And who was it that destroyed these millions? Without evildoers, there would have not been Archipelago. I can never express how much I appreciate the writings of Solzhenitsyn and his point of view, and when he does his due diligence to face the realities and tell us what kind of enemy we are facing. So you see, at the root of all these things that we see going on around us, there is an ideology. Some of us agree with that ideology and perhaps follow that ideology, and because otherwise we will be called irrational and unscientific. But even many scientists, very famous scientists, which perhaps these days those who follow the narrative and follow the ideology of technocratic system of future, they don't believe that such person like Max Planck was a great scientist. But I like you, my very intelligent listener, to just listen to me. I want to read this from Max Planck, a scientist who spent his entire life in pursuit of science. Let's see what he says. Max Planck said that all matter is grounded in a conscious and intelligent mind that holds the fate of the world and every human being in its almighty hand. He continues, as a man who has devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, to the study of matter, I can tell you, as a result of my research about the atoms, this much. There is no matter as such. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particles of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system of the atom together. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. Both religion and science require a belief in God. For believers, God is in the beginning, and for the physicist, he is at the end of all considerations. To the former, he is the foundation. To the latter, the crown of the edifice of every generalized worldview. That God existed before there were human beings on earth, that he holds the entire world, believers and non-believers, in his omnipotent hand for eternity, and that he will remain enthroned on a level inaccessible to human comprehension, long after the earth and everything that is on it has gone to ruins. Those who profess this faith and who, inspired by it, in veneration and complete confidence, feel secure from the dangers of life under protection of the Almighty. Only those may number themselves among the truly religious. This is profound. This, every time, it gives me goosebumps. Every time I read this, from the mind of a scientist, a man that works with materialistic world and try to figure out the relation between objects and find the laws of nature, and he bows down to the Almighty. So, what's the conclusion? In this episode, I wanted to tell you that put your faith in the Almighty, not the science and scientists, that they all have a price and they have to deliver, otherwise their grants will be cut and their livelihood is in danger. Not those that can be hired. Trust the one and the only one that who was in the beginning, and he will be present at the end. Before I bring this episode to an end, I would like to invite you to listen to another quote from the book Gulag, Archipelago by Solzhenitsyn, when he talks about how good and evil are in every human and how narrow is the gap between the two. And it's up to us to choose. But the question is it up to us or is the circumstances? Take a listen. If only it were all so simple. If only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and it were necessary only to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being, and who is willing to destroy a piece of his own heart? During the life of any heart, this line keeps changing place. Sometimes it's squeezed one way, but exuberant evil, and sometimes it shifts to allow enough space for good to flourish. One and the same human being is, at various ages, under various circumstances, a totally different human being. At times, he is close to being a devil, at times to sainthood, but his name does not change, and to that name we ascribe the whole lot, good and evil. Socrates taught us, know thyself. Confronted by the pit into which we are about to toss those who have done us harm, we halt. Stricken dumb, It is, after all, only because of the way things worked out that they were the executioners and we were not. From good to evil is one quiver, says the proverb, and correspondingly, from evil to good. Whoever got in by mistake either adjusted to the milieu, or else was thrown in, or erased out, or even fell across the rails himself. Still, were there no good people left there? Well, I hope you enjoyed this sobering episode of Standup Historian. I don't know if this episode will stay on YouTube or not, but I will definitely publish it on YouTube, and I feel like it's my responsibility. I have 2 hits under 2 strikes. This is going to be the 3rd one. And it's always a pleasure to talk with you, although it's a one-way, and I hope that you leave me your comments, visit my websites, and get in touch with me. God bless you all. Be safe, and remember, fear only exists to be conquered.